The fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran shattered today, igniting direct airstrikes and retaliatory missile attacks. As oil prices soar and regional stability hangs in the balance, here's a comprehensive breakdown of this escalating conflict. The immediate outlook for the U.S.-Iran conflict suggests a trajectory toward prolonged and intensified hostilities. Recent airstrikes by the U.S. have targeted Iranian military and nuclear facilities, aiming to diminish Iran's capacity for retaliation. This aggressive approach reflects a broader strategy to contain Iran's influence in the Middle East, which has long been a point of contention for U.S. policymakers. Historically, Iran's regional ambitions have been viewed as a threat to U.S. interests and its allies, leading to a series of confrontations over the years. In response to these airstrikes, Iran is expected to escalate its missile attacks against U.S. allies, particularly in Iraq and the Gulf states, further complicating an already volatile security landscape. This cycle of retaliation could destabilize the region even further. One potential scenario involves increased involvement from regional powers, notably Israel, which may seize the opportunity to strike Iranian nuclear sites or military assets. Such actions could provoke a broader regional war, drawing in countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, both of which are deeply concerned about Iran's ambitions. The ongoing tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for global oil shipments, are likely to exacerbate the situation, leading to sustained increases in oil prices that could trigger economic hardships worldwide. The enduring standstill in diplomatic negotiations has rendered the prospect of a ceasefire bleak, leaving the region in a precarious state of high tension. As the conflict evolves, the implications for U.S. foreign policy are significant, particularly regarding its relationships with allies and its approach to energy security. Looking ahead, the U.S. may need to reconsider its military commitments, and the international community must prepare for the possibility of a broader confrontation in the coming weeks. The path to the collapse of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire has been paved with escalating provocations and strategic miscalculations over the past weeks. The immediate trigger was Iran's aggressive attack on 3 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, an essential maritime route for global energy trade. This act was perceived by the U.S. as a direct threat to not only its national interests, but also to the stability of global energy security. The incident, which occurred just days before the ceasefire's breakdown, heightened tensions to a breaking point. In retaliation, the U.S. revoked a critical waiver that allowed Iranian oil sales, a strategic move aimed at economically strangling the Iranian regime and removing any incentive for maintaining peace. The failure of diplomatic efforts played a significant role as well. While President Trump had previously claimed that Tehran sought a deal, the reality has proven quite different. The breakdown of dialogue left both nations increasingly favoring military action over negotiations. This conflict is not new. It has roots in a long-standing adversarial relationship between the U.S. and Iran, exacerbated by recent events such as the death of former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, which has further fueled tensions and uncertainty in an already volatile region. The collapse of this ceasefire has immediate implications for regional stability, potentially escalating conflicts involving proxy groups aligned with Iran. Furthermore, the deteriorating situation may disrupt global oil markets, driving prices higher and impacting economies worldwide. Looking forward, the potential for renewed military engagement looms large, with both nations seemingly locked in a cycle of retaliation. If diplomatic channels remain closed, the prospect of a broader conflict could become increasingly likely, forcing stakeholders to reassess their strategies in the Middle East. The collapse of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire has immediate and profound implications for global energy markets and regional stability. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that is crucial for international oil transport, handles approximately 20% of the world's total oil consumption daily. This strategic choke point is vital not just for oil exporting nations, but also for economies that rely heavily on imported oil. The recent standstill in tanker traffic has already resulted in a 6% spike in global oil prices, reflecting investor panic over possible supply disruptions. This price increase can have widespread economic repercussions, not only in the US, but across the globe, as rising energy costs impact everything from transportation to manufacturing. Higher oil prices can lead to inflation, affecting consumer spending and economic growth. As families face increased costs at the pump, discretionary spending may decline, putting pressure on businesses. The conflict poses a significant risk of drawing in other regional powers, potentially igniting a wider war in the Middle East, a region already fraught with tension. The U.S. military's actions on Iranian soil and Iran's retaliatory strikes against U.S. bases in neighboring countries indicate a dangerous escalation that could destabilize the entire region. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel may feel compelled to take sides, further complicating an already volatile situation. With the U.S. and Iran prioritizing military responses over diplomatic negotiations, the chance for a peaceful resolution diminishes rapidly. Economic analysts warn that this conflict threatens not only to raise gasoline prices, but also to disrupt global markets and create uncertainty in international relations. The potential for a protracted conflict could lead to energy shortages, prompting governments to reconsider their energy policies and alliances. This situation marks a pivotal moment that could shape the future of the Middle East and beyond. As nations grapple with these developments, the likelihood of increased military engagements looms large. Countries may seek to bolster their defenses, while businesses might be compelled to adapt to new economic realities. In the coming weeks, the international community must urgently pursue diplomatic channels to avert a larger crisis, as the consequences of continued hostilities become increasingly untenable for all involved. On July 10, 2026, the long-standing ceasefire between the United States and Iran officially collapsed. This dramatic shift was triggered by an Iranian attack on 3 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz early on July 9th. Following this incident, President Donald Trump announced the end of the ceasefire, which had been in place for several years. In retaliation, U.S. small forces launched a second night of coordinated airstrikes targeting Iranian military sites across southern coastal and eastern provinces. These strikes began at 10 p.m. local time and resulted in significant damage to dozens of strategic military infrastructures, including missile storage facilities and command centers. Concurrently, the Trump administration revoked a critical waiver that allowed Iranian oil sales, effectively cutting off a vital source of revenue for the Iranian regime. The historical context of this conflict is rooted in decades of tension between the two nations, exacerbated by previous sanctions and military confrontations. Iran's response was swift and aggressive. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards fired 10 ballistic missiles targeting the Azraq military base in Jordan. They also launched attacks on U.S. military installations in Kuwait and Bahrain, marking a dangerous escalation that could draw in regional allies. By the morning of July 10th, reports indicated that oil tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz had reached a near standstill, creating a significant bottleneck at this crucial global energy choke point. This disruption has raised oil prices worldwide and prompted fears of a broader economic impact. The situation has rapidly transformed from a contained conflict into a wider regional confrontation, with Iran promising strong retaliation against U.S. actions and its allies. Analysts warn that this could lead to a prolonged military engagement, destabilizing an already volatile region. Looking ahead, diplomatic efforts may become increasingly urgent as nations assess the risks of a full-scale war. The international community must now navigate a precarious path, seeking to mediate tensions while ensuring security in a critical global trade route. With both sides entrenched in their positions, the likelihood of further military escalation remains high, and the implications for global energy markets are profound. Immediate negotiations are essential to prevent a catastrophic escalation. As the situation intensifies, what could be the long-term implications of this conflict for global energy security? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for daily deep dives on the world's most pressing stories.